Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Judicial activism is becoming the norm in most of the countries, and mostly those countries which want to say, well, we have a great judiciary. I've seen that judicial activism is not that important, playing an important role in states like USA, Canada. But in India, the judiciary at a higher level is poking its nose everywhere. The concept of the public interest litigation is peculiar to India. And now judicial activism is assuming dangerous forms. It's welcome, I don't deny it. As long as it protects the country and especially the vulnerable class of the people. But when it doesn't do so, then it is something to be looked at with fear. And the High Courts and the Supreme Court in India are giving judgments, giving orders which are beyond their scope. And amazingly, the government is keeping quiet. There is a danger of judicial activism becoming judicial dictatorship. Like what happened in Pakistan. The army, which was supposed to be under the control of the executive, became supra-executive. And here, the Supreme Court is trying to be supra-prime minister, supra-government, and not only the executive, but even in the legislature. It is telling the parliament to pass such and such a law. That's none of the business of the Supreme Court. And the recent challenge to the appointment of election commissioner has seen the Supreme Court bench make strong observations on the current selection process. Again, the processes are not to be scrutinized. They are neither the law nor the Constitution. The Constitution says the government shall appoint it, period. No, but the Supreme Court is in supreme judgment says it's not desirable. And the bench suggested that the Chief Justice of India's presence should be in the committee to appoint the election commissioner. Why? Already, because of the weakness of one prime minister, the earlier one, Supreme Court decided to appoint the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court and transfer them at will. So it became absolutely independent by itself. They'll send the list to the government, and they do. That so and so is to be appointed, and that has to be appointed, which is not done. As I have already been saying, this is the first time in the history of the world that a body, the staff, decides, okay, so and so shall be the principal, so and so shall be the other teachers. No. And then, now, they are saying that the election commission, which is supposed to be independent, autonomous, and not subservient to the Supreme Court, the selection of that should be decided by the collegium sort of a system in which Chief Justice of India should be a member. As a matter of fact, these are the political aspirations of a group of judges. And having tasted blood in the times of Mr. Manmohan Singh, they now want to interfere in everything. And the center has very correctly countered, questioning the wisdom of the judicial intervention and citing the separation of power doctrine. The judiciary is basically meant to do three things. A, interpret the law, not the inferences. Second, protect the Constitution and decide the questions of law. More than that is not their domain. The legislature is to make the laws. The executive is to implement the laws. And judiciary is to interpret the laws. And that is a clear-cut thing. But here, Supreme Court says, well, COVID has taken place. What has the government done about the vaccination? As if they are the supreme authority. No. Supreme authority is the legislature. And having decided that, they have delegated that execution of that authority to the executive. The migrant labor left their places, went back to their homes at the time of COVID, and Supreme Court intervenes. Again, none of their business. And now the last one is terrible, terrible. And if Supreme Court is so careful of the country, one of the things they should do is to protect the vulnerable classes where the executive fails to do it. For example, only today the news was there that Jama Masjid has banned the entry of the girls singly or in groups until they are accompanied by a male. And the male should either be the father, the husband, or the brother. Why? Isn't it violating the constitution and the law? As a matter of fact, action should have been taken by the executive, arresting the imam, whose salary is paid by the government. So government failed, the Women Commission failed, and the judiciary failed. Here, the Supreme Court should have taken suo motu action and directed the police to arrest him for violating the laws of the laws that govern the equality for all. So Center has objected, but they also succumbed. They presented the file of the Election Commission's appointment to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, well, this was done in a hurry. Whether it was done in a hurry is none of the concerns of the Supreme Court. And the public interest litigation, which is basically personal promotion litigation. It's not public interest, it's private interest. Now, election commissions in India are one of the most reputed, honest bodies, and their services have been utilized the world over. Would you believe if I was to tell you that there were to be elections in 5 countries in Africa, and the UN requested the Election Commission of India to send its officers and to oversee those elections. So international recognition is there. And it is playing a stellar role in guarding the democracy election after election. Look what's happening in USA. The elections took place in November and the results are still coming. And the Election Commission of India at one time conducted the elections all over India in one day. Of course, then the government started saying that it's difficult, the infrastructure is not there, and they accepted it, which was wrong. But it has unfailingly ensured that the writ of the voters carries the day. There have been situations when there have been lawlessness, and Commission has come heavily on that. So much so that at one time the Election Commission had even told the Prime Minister not to use the government vehicles for the party purpose. And that's a phenomenal achievement. And to deride that commission and those commissioners and the process of their appointments is absolutely just a show to poke its nose in the affairs where it's not concerned. The demands for bipartisan appointments to the commission have been there for a long time. But governments never agree to that. Today the people are saying, especially the opposition parties, that Modi has appointed so and so as a commissioner. Fine. And then High Court's one judgment amused me. Supreme Court's. They said the Constitution says that the election commissioner shall be for 5 years or till he reaches the age of 65. Now the person who has been appointed, Arun, he would reach that age in 4 years. So they say, no, it should be 5 years. And the judges, the Supreme Court Chief Justice was there for 18 days one Supreme Court judge. Another Supreme Court Chief Justice was for about a couple of months. There was no objection to that. As a matter of fact, the CVC Act of 2003 empowers a committee comprising the Prime Minister, the Chief Justice, and the leader of opposition to recommend Central Vigilance Commission, but not the Election Commission, because Central Vigilance Commission does not have that status which the Election Commissioner has. And the Supreme Court says, well, if CGI is required for vigilance, but then they forget that the vigilance is a part of law and order system. Vigilance is overriding, but Election Commission is not that sort of a thing. It is overseeing the elections to ensure orderly transition of the government and working of the voting system so that no vote is deprived. Now, for example, the Lokpal Act of 2013 also says that the chief of the Lokpal and the CBI director shall be appointed with the advice of the Chief Justice. Again, Lokpal is akin to the justices, fine, the advice can always be there, but it must not be binding. As a matter of fact, I remember that somebody had asked Jawaharlal Nehru and then Indira Gandhi that why don't you take in view the opinion of the Chief Justice? And both of them said no. They are not to decide who their colleagues or the bosses shall be. Their purpose is to do their job, not to make the appointments. They are not the appointing authorities. So this does make no sense at all. The Supreme Court's quibble that CECs are not getting fixed 6-year tenure is very puzzling. Does a chief of army staff, air staff, do they get that? No. They get a limited tenure or the age at which they have got to go. And that has happened, as I said, in the case of the Chief Justice of India themselves. Perhaps the two election commissioners should be protected. Let's be very clear. The independence has to be protected. And that's why the removal process is impeachment. The peculiar question is whether the Supreme Court should intervene the appointments to a coordinated institution, especially when there has been no abuse of power, not a single case. Unlike Malafide executive interference in pre-collegial days, no. Ideally, political parties should arrive at a consensus and work out an appointment process. But it has to be done by the Parliament. Supreme Court has nothing to do with it. And in case the government doesn't stop the tentacles of this dragon from spreading, unless the Prime Minister says clearly to the Supreme Court, keep shut, this direction will not be accepted. You remember Andrew Jackson, when he was the President of USA, Supreme Court passed a judgment. And Andrew Jackson said, well, Supreme Court has done the judgment, now let them implement it as well, because the implementation is by the executive. So they can tell it, get the hell out of here, keep your mouth shut. Otherwise, I feel that India would be in a state similar to Pakistan, with a difference being that there the army calls the rules, it rules the roost, and here would be the Supreme Court being the supra Prime Minister, supra President, and that is unacceptable. That is negation of democratic forms and the democratic norms. That is in fact a clear danger. But would the political leadership take action? And they should be bold to take action. I know if this had happened at the time of Jawaharlal or Indira Gandhi, by this time the Supreme Court's doors would have been shut and the judges were been told, okay, you are going to be impeached. Until the impeachment process is there, you cannot sit in judgment. That process should have started basically when the four judges of the Supreme Court had a press conference giving vent to the press about the grievances. That was the beginning, the thin edge, the end of the wedge. But the better the government and sooner the government takes action, the better it would be for the government, for the country, and for the institutions. No institution and no organ has the right to override the decisions of other organs or to poke its nose in the affairs of others where it's not required. That nose, if it becomes too long, needs to be cut off. And if India is to escape that danger which has beset Pakistan, it had better act today, now. Tomorrow may be too late. Thank you.